So this is going to be a relatively short video. It's just a quick one really, because we did some training and we had a few people kind of say they wanted to go back and show things to other members of their team, do kind of a few presentations, and they kind of wanted to know what settings we used, because SQL Server is rubbish when it comes to kind of being demonstrated over Zoom if you're doing it to a laptop, which is a small screen, or if you're presenting en masse and you have to kind of put your desktop out there and you basically end up with a tiny management studio. And what I kind of mean is this. So if I quickly write a query for jar.employee, let's do that one. Okay, you can now see that this is not exactly ideal for teaching, for passing information on, anything really. It's small, a lot of white space, not ideal. Like I said, especially if you're doing this to people with laptops on Zoom, for example. So, what kind of things can we do? So, firstly, I would always recommend getting Zoom It. If you quickly Google, you can see here I just Googled Zoom It, and the top result was Microsoft site, which is sysinternals, and you download Zoom It and you literally just run it. And what it does then is it allows you to press Control 1 and it will let you zoom in. Keep hold of Control, you can write you can draw nice little rectangles around things, you can doodle freehand if you want to. So it kind of lets you highlight things. It's really useful for that kind of stuff. So first thing I would definitely recommend is Zoom It. Now that doesn't necessarily solve everything, because obviously you could be going in and out of your results, you could be kind of pointing to things, you could be highlighting stuff. That's all well and good, but it only works once you've zoomed in, and if you keep zooming in and out, it's going to disorient people, so you don't really want to do that. Now the ways we can get around that are with our actual queries. So the actual query text itself, you've got a little 100% here, which basically means we can change the size of the font to be X% size. So if I go for 150%, you'll see that it suddenly becomes much larger, much easier to read, much nicer for presenting. You can type in whatever you like here, so you can make this a manual one. I usually just stick to 150. It's one of the defaults that comes with it. Now that works great for the code. The only problem is the grid view, and the grid view is small. Okay, that's a pain. However, there are actually ways around this. So if you go to the Tools menu on top of Management Studio, you'll see Options. Click on Options. Now what you're getting here is Fonts and Colors under Environment. So if I quickly zoom in using good old Zoom It, you can see under Environment I've got Fonts and Colors. Then you can see Show Settings for Text Editor. Now if we change that with the drop down and go to Grid Results, you'll see that our grid results are set to be tiny. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to pick 12. You can pick whatever you like, but 12 works. So what you can do now is just do OK. Management Studio at this point does throw a bit of a hissy fit. It basically just says you need to restart, so it's not exactly that bad. So I'm just going to copy this bit of code because I don't want to write it again next time. I'm going to boot Management Studio. Obviously takes a couple of seconds to reload, but it's not too bad. We go, and so if I now go back into here, it will retain the size of your text, so you can see that's still 150%. But now if we execute it, we now get a nice big grid view. Now that's much better to use. So we've got a nice big grid view that we can show people, we can highlight, people can read this, all is good. Now the other thing that you can do if you're presenting or if you're trying to train or anything like that is basically try not to have the results and your text kind of vying for space on the screen. It's not ideal, because mostly if you're writing queries, you'll be thinning them out, so you'll have less columns involved, but you will still have a lot of rows. So even here I've got 224 rows. Chances are I probably kind of only want first name, last name really, so it's going to be quite a thin result, but long. And it's actually the same with your text. If you think your query text, it's usually going to be long, maybe 30, 50, 100, 200,000 lines. They go down, so you end up vying for space between the two. Now obviously you can Control R to kind of get rid of the results and put them back again. A little annoying, but you can do Control R to get rid of them. The other option is to go back to Tools, Options. This time we're going to go down to Query Results, SQL Server and results to grid. If I zoom in again, so you'll see query results and results to grid. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tick this one and both of these. Now what that's going to do is, let's just quickly tick them, almost forgot. Here we go. It won't work in this instance. You have to start a new window. You don't have to restart Management Studio, just open a new window. Now what you'll see is we've now got a slightly different editor because it actually says messages at the top. So if we paste our code in here and run it, you'll actually now get a full screen of results, and it actually switches tabs between your editor and your results. So they're no longer vying for space, you can literally just click between them. The messages tab, based on one of the selections I made in that options, will now actually tell you the code you ran as well, which can be quite useful, especially when presenting and training. So I usually put that on as well. Like I said, this is quite a nice way of then kind of being able to flick between. Now, one other thing you can do, kind of handy, is, let's copy this again. If you actually want to see things in a more side-by-side format, what you can actually do is, here we're going to right-click our tab, and if you look down here, it actually has an option that says New Vertical Tab Group. So I'm going to click New Vertical Tab Group, and what you'll see is it actually splits the screen. So if you copy the code from here over to here and run it, you'll now get your results side by side. Now I find this a lot easier for the simple reason that I can highlight results, I can point things out alongside the query itself. And generally speaking, not always the case, but generally speaking, queries aren't wide. Queries are tall, they're not wide. And you can easily format them for the sake of a demo to be quite thin and only fit within this space. And if they don't, just get rid of the Object Explorer. You get a bit more room. You can use quite a bit of space, but you've got more height, which is what you want with the SQL. So this is a nice way of just kind of saying, okay, look, this is what we've done, and you can see it's reflected over here and blah, blah. So it's actually a nice way of kind of having them side by side. So for Management Studio, those are the different things I would do if you're ever presenting. The only other thing I wanted to mention while I'm here is about Azure Data Studio. Now, if you've used it or not, kind of irrelevant, just download it and use it, it's quite good. But obviously if you're demonstrating something that is kind of T-SQL only, so you're not kind of using the management functions of Management Studio, then you can actually use Azure Data Studio as well. And if you kind of go in here and let's do a new query, let's just put my query back in again and run that. Now you'll see we get a similar feel to Management Studio. We've got our query and we've got our results, they're on top of each other. But the reason I quite like this, you can't do the side-by-side thing that I'm aware of. You might be able to, but I'm not overly aware of it. Split left, split right, okay, you probably can. I haven't tried it. But one thing I do like with this more than anything is Control plus and Control minus will actually just zoom the whole screen in. So you can actually kind of show people a bit more of Object Explorer, which there is no way of making that nicer in Management Studio. So you can actually just use the pluses and the minuses with Control, just to kind of zoom in and out to your own kind of free will, how you want it to look, and actually demonstrate things that way, which can actually be a lot nicer. So that's if you want to use Azure Data Studio. But otherwise, like I said, for Management Studio, these are the kind of things I do. So hopefully if anyone's kind of presenting or training or doing anything like that, hopefully this will give you kind of a bit of an idea of stuff you can do. Got blogs on there, tons of them, SQL Server all over the place. We've got a few Docker, a few PowerShell. We obviously do consulting, support, anything you want. There's emails, there's contacts, all manner of stuff. So go check the website. Yeah, sqltraining.co.uk.